we're not closing our country.
Boom. That was Trump at his best. He's exactly right. And it needed to be said. Because just hours before that, the president made that statement. The CDC director, he strikes again, Robert Redfield. He was out sounding the alarm, pushing the panic button, telling the Financial Times, we've seen evidence that the concerns it would go south in the southern hemisphere, like the flu, are coming true. And then when the southern hemisphere is over, I suspect it will reground itself in the north. Consider the source. Why should we trust the CDC at all on this? Last week, we exposed their history of political bias, and frankly, they've been bungling the response to COVID from the beginning. It started with their testing deficiencies, and now this. The Atlantic reporting that the CDC is mixing the results of viral and antibody tests, even though the two tests reveal different information and are used for different reasons, which now means it's now way harder to actually gauge how much our testing capacity has improved, and it's improved quite a bit. Joining me now is Dr. Scott Jensen, physician and Minnesota State Senator. Doctor, the CDC, when people hear, the CDC, that acronym, I think they want to think it's like the good housekeeping seal of approval. Everything they say is accurate. But what's really going on?
Well, the CDC has been around since the 1940s, and its original intent was to help against malaria. But through steady mission creep, they've become something they were never intended to be. And for certain, it's a political organization. And as you mentioned, they bungled the testing right out of the blocks. But what was even worse than that was once they realized they bungled it, instead of looking to someone who was already moving forward and getting some help, epidemiologist Larry Brilliant made the comment that they should have just swallowed their pride and reached out to Germany and used their testing. But instead, the CDC kept us mired down, so we got way behind right out of the blocks. And then 7 weeks ago, we had the CDC mushing things in regards to how to code death certificates. And now we find out that unconscionably, they are mixing serology tests with PCR tests. And this has no place in their work, because these numbers are driving governors' decisions as to closing things down or opening things up. The American people need to draw a line in the sand and say, we're going to have to look at the CDC differently than we have before.
Yeah, well, maybe you have to reform it or reconstitute it, but when we can't even have faith in the numbers of deaths or tests that have been done, I mean, that just erodes trust across the board. And President Trump, that's the last thing he needs right now, is hearing Redfield out there, constantly pushing the panic button. Just as we get a little good news, it's always, no, it can't be good news. Got to take 5 steps backward. Now, the media, Scott, they're outraged that the president just doesn't abdicate everything over to the CDC.
The CDC, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, it is really considered the national voice.
He should do what his own advisors, what his CDC says is important.
We talk about blowing up trust with the one agency that we as a country have had high regard for, and that is the CDC.
A few years ago, the CDC was pushing gun control, Dr. Jensen. That was their big effort, and now it's just become a partisan organization to a lot of us. I'm sorry. I mean, I'm sure they're good people there, but why are they surprised that people don't trust it after what happened?
I think they've absolutely fractured the trust.
Dr. Jensen.